Anastasia is an animated film released in the year 1997 and is directed by animation legends Don Bluth and Gary Goldman. Anastasia focuses on the journey of young Anastasia Nikolaevna, who was separated from her family during the Russian Revolution, has lost her memory, and is now trying to find out who she is and where she came from. Along the way, she meets a dog named Puka and two conmen named Dmitri and Vlad. While on her journey, she finds adventure, danger, love, and yada yada yada. Look, if you're watching this video, then you've most likely seen the film. And honestly, it's a pretty good movie, isn't it? The animation is fantastic, the music is top-notch. Overall, it's a solid animated film. However, when it comes to historical accuracy, well... yeah, let's just say it gets a big fat F on its report card, doesn't it? Yeah, to say that Anastasia is historically inaccurate is like saying that apples grow from trees. No shit. That's why for this video, me, being a huge history lover, want to focus on everything this movie gets wrong. At least, historically. When it comes to reviewing the actual movie itself, that'll be its own video. But, for now, I want to primarily focus on the history. Now, I understand that the Romanov family and the Russian Revolution is a very complicated subject in history, and along the way I'll also have to bring up the Russian Civil War, but for the most part, I'm going to try and simplify things as I don't want this video to be like an hour long. So, with that being said, I'll address the history as we go along in the film. So, shall we?
There was a time, not very long ago, when we lived in an enchanted world of elegant palaces and grand parties.
For us it was great, but everyone else though, yeah, not so much. They were starving, struggling with jobs, and oh yeah, did I forget to mention we're in the middle of a world war? That was the thing.
The year was 1916.
Close. It was actually 1917. First of all, there were actually two separate revolutions in 1917, but I'll go more into those when we actually get to the revolutions. When Rasputin puts his curse on the Romanov family, they're supposed to die in a fortnight. So by that logic, it could be possible that this party is taking place in 1916, like on, say, December 31st, which means the next day will be January 1st, 1917, But even so, the first revolution happened from March 8th to March 16th. Ironically, this would be called the February Revolution. The reason for this is because Russia at the time used the old-style calendar, which meant that it was February for them when the revolution began.
And my son, Nicholas, was the Tsar of Imperial Russia.
And boy was he hated! But seriously though, Tsar Nicholas II, he was not a popular dude. Like, at all.
Hello, darling. We were celebrating the 300th anniversary of our family's rule.
Again, you're close. The Romanov rule in Russia actually began on February 21st, 1613. So, if this party is to celebrate 300 years of Romanov rule, then that would mean that we're in 1913, not 1916. That would also mean that we're currently in February 1916, a full year before the revolution would even begin. What the heck?
It plays our lullaby.
You can play it at night before you go to sleep and pretend that it's me singing.
Okay, so I've heard people ask the question before if the grandma is based off an actual character, and she is. That person was Maria Fyodorovna. I should probably make this clear that I'm not Russian, so there is a chance I might mispronounce things here and there. I actually take pronunciation very seriously, so if by any chance I mispronounce anything, I'm sorry, I really am trying with this. Maria Fyodorovna, or the Dagmar of Denmark, married Alexander III on October 28, 1866. They were described as having an exceptionally happy marriage. Together, they would bear a total of 6 children, the first being Nicholas II. Despite her husband being seen as a tyrant, who would later watch over as hundreds of thousands of Russians would starve to death during the Russian famine of 1891-92, Maria, on the other hand, was described to be universally loved by everyone. One such duchess would describe her as saying, her distinguished and forceful personality and the intelligence which shone in her face made her the perfect figure of a queen. She was extraordinarily well loved in Russia, and everyone had confidence in her. She really was a real mother to her people. At Alexander III's funeral in 1894, she was greeted with almost deafening applause. And keep in mind this, the royal family was not popular at the time. So this really said something. After the revolution and the death of her family, she would go the rest of her life believing it to be a lie and hoping that one day her family would come out of hiding and return to her. They never did. She was in the city of Kiev at the time of the revolution, and afterwards, she would live the remainder of her life in Copenhagen, Denmark, before passing away at the age of 80 on October 13th, 1928. She was described to have loved her family dearly and could never bear to admit the truth about their gruesome fate. But we'll get to that when we get to it.
But we would never be together in Paris. His name was Rasputin. We thought he was a holy man, but he was a fraud. Power mad and dangerous.
Ooh boy, I've been looking forward to talking about you, Grigory Rasputin. A man with more mystery revolving around him than a Scooby-Doo episode. Grigory Rasputin was described as something of a starets, or holy man, with incredible powers that defied all logic and science. He was described as a prophet, a mystic, and a healer, and throughout the 1900s, he had earned quite a name for himself. So much so that Tsar Nicholas II would ask Rasputin to heal his son, Alexei. To oversimplify, Nicholas and his wife were second cousins. Therefore, all of their children, including young Anastasia, were inbred. It's likely they all suffer from genetic disorders that come from being inbred, but it's likely that Alexei suffered at the worst. He suffered from what is known as hemophilia, which, to explain, let me give you an example. Say you go to the park, it's a beautiful day outside, you're just having fun, tra-la-la-la, but then suddenly you trip and you fall. It's not a big deal, really, but you do notice that you've scraped your knee, and now you're bleeding. Oh, it's okay though, it's just a small cut, you'll get over it. In about a few hours, it'll scab over, and you won't have to worry about it anymore. Alexei, on the other hand, would just keep bleeding. And bleed, and bleed, and bleed, until he would eventually just bleed to death. That's hemophilia oversimplified, basically. I'm well aware there's other variants of it, but that's the general idea. Tsar Nicholas II would bring Rasputin in to heal his son, Alexei, and strangely, he was successful. It was described by one of Alexei's doctors as wholly inexplicable from a medical point of view. This would put Rasputin in very great favor of the royal family, and he would pretty much become a member of the family. In the movie, Nicholas described Rasputin as a traitor and tells him to get out.
How dare you return to the palace?
But I am your confidant.
Confidant. Ha! You are a traitor!
But in real life, Nicholas and the royal family was some of the very, very few people who actually liked him.
You and your family will die within a fortnight. I will not rest until I see the end of the Romanov line forever!
We got a #1 victory royale.
So, no guards, huh? Not a single man to shoot Rasputin for being that close to the Tsar, huh? Okay! Well, to be fair, Nicholas wouldn't have even been there. He was actually on the front line in World War I. And when I say the front line, I mean he was actually in Mogilev, which is in modern-day Belarus. Tsar Nicholas II, despite having pretty much no military experience whatsoever, decided that he would take charge of the Russian military during World War I. And to basically oversimplify, Russia did badly. Really badly. Now, to be fair to Nicholas, he rarely truly did call the shots. He did often leave it to his generals to manage the plans and authorize the battles. Despite this, though, he was in Mogilev leading the troops when he should have been in Petrograd leading the people. And because he was there in Mogilev, he got the blame for the military failures, which led to his already very low popularity plummeting even further than before.
Consumed by his hatred for Nicholas and his family, Rasputin sold his soul for the power to destroy them.
So, yeah, I think this goes without saying, that didn't happen. Like, not even remotely close to real history.
The spark of unhappiness in our country was fanned into a flame that would soon destroy our lives forever.
So now we've come to the Russian Revolution, or revolutions, as to be more accurate. So the movie has taken both the February Revolution and the October Revolution and just kind of sandwiched them together into one event. But the question now is, which revolution is it more accurate to? The answer is the February Revolution. On March 8th, 1917, or February 23rd if you're using the old calendar like they were, thousands of Russians would flood the streets of Petrograd, demanding better work wages, food, an end to the war, and many other things that were pretty much just ruining their lives. Eventually, the protests would erupt in pure violence. For about 8 days, the city would practically become a war zone. In total, about 1,300 people would lose their lives in these riots. The chairman of the Duma, Mikhail Rodzienko, again, sorry if I butchered that, would send the Tsar, still stationed in Mogilev, this telegram. The situation is serious. The capital is in a state of anarchy. The government is paralyzed. Transport service and the supply of food and fuel have become completely disrupted. General discontent is growing. There must be no delay. Any procrastination is tantamount to death. Tsar Nicholas II would return home a few days later, where, after talking to his generals and realizing he had completely lost control over the situation, Tsar Nicholas II would be forced to abdicate his throne. Alexei was deemed too young to succeed his father, and his brother Michael pretty much just said no thanks. And thus, the 304-year-long reign of the Romanovs officially came to an end by March of 1917. As for the October Revolution, well, now I'm really oversimplifying this part. But to basically sum it up, a new government was founded called the Provisional Government. This new government proved to be very unpopular right out the gate. It was corrupt, it didn't give the people what they wanted, and for some reason, they still thought they could win World War I, despite massive losses on the Eastern Front. This is where Vladimir Lenin and the Bolsheviks would come into play. On November 7th, or October 25th by the old calendar, Vladimir and his men stormed the Winter Palace in Petrograd and just kind of took it. Yeah, they just like that. There actually was little to no violence at all in this revolution, despite what this famous propaganda piece says. The guards in the Winter Palace didn't feel like fighting for a government that was failing them, so they just kind of willingly let it happen, and it did. And also, I think this part goes without saying, no magical demons from hell assisted either revolution. I think that part goes without saying. You know, in case you were confused. So, Grigory Rasputin is dead. And it's kind of like real life. I mean, the icy river was involved somehow. So, remember what I said earlier when I said that the royal family were some of the very, very few people who actually liked Rasputin? Well, let's just say that Nicholas's reputation wasn't the only thing that went downhill from that point on. After saving Alexei's life, Rasputin would become very, very close with the royal family. All of the kids, including Anastasia, would describe him as their very good friend. This immediately made some people raise an eyebrow. Rasputin was basically a party dude. He loved alcohol. He was a well-known womanizer, despite the fact that he was married with 3 kids back in his home in Alabak. Interestingly enough, though, one of his sons' names was Dmitri. I wonder. Nah! Bottom line, the Russian people weren't too happy that the Tsar, the one mandated by heaven itself, was allowing some weird homeless guy with strange abilities just hang around the Winter Palace and the royal family like that. Like, imagine that Donald Trump not only pardoned Tiger King, but also invited him to live in the White House. That is the situation Russia was facing at the time. Many people believed he was using his holy powers to corrupt the mind of the Tsar and Empress, and may have also been sleeping with the Empress and even possibly the children. Now, there's no evidence whatsoever of such behavior between Rasputin, the Queen, or the children, but bottom line, Rasputin was making the Tsar look bad, and along with the war going badly, the Tsardom couldn't deal with any more tension. So, on December 30th, 1916, or December 17th, as the old school says, Rasputin was murdered by a group of nobles, including Tsar Nicholas's own nephew-in-law, Felix Yusupov. Now, Rasputin's death is very speculative, and nobody knows 100% for sure what happened that night. What we do know, however, is that he was shot multiple times, once through the head, and then his body was dumped into the Malaya Nivka River. It would be discovered 2 days later. However, some accounts say that despite being shot, Rasputin was still alive throughout the entire experience, and he even tried to fight back to the bitter end, even apparently being seen by eyewitnesses as struggling to get out of the water after being thrown in. Now again, this is all just speculation, half-truths, and even a fairy tale at this point, and we'll never 100% know what happened that night.
What had always been was now gone forever. And my Anastasia, my beloved grandchild. I never saw her again.
Oh, and the other four, yeah, I miss them very much dearly as well. Mm-hmm. Now we've come to the part where we have to talk about the Tsar's family and their deaths. Now, in order to talk about that, we have to talk about the Russian Civil War. And keep in mind, again, I am vastly oversimplifying the conflict. After the October Revolution, despite just walking in and taking over, there were plenty of people that weren't too happy about this. So, on one side, you have the Bolshevik Red Army, and on the other side, you have the Russian White Army. The Whites were made up of many different ideological factions, each with their own different ideological goals in mind for the future of Russia. Now, some of these people actually wanted to bring the Tsar back. No idea why, but yeah, they wanted Nicholas back. By July of 1918, Nicholas II and his family were now living in the city of Yekaterinburg. They had lost pretty much all of their power and were now under constant surveillance by the Bolsheviks. Now, around this time, the White Army was on its way to Yekaterinburg, and the guards watching over the Tsar and his family began to get a little nervous about this. Now, it's not 100% known whether Vladimir Lenin gave this order or not, but what is known is that on July 17th, 1918, at about 2 in the morning, the Tsar and his family were rushed out of bed and scurried to the basement. After waiting for a few minutes, a man by the name of Yakov Yarotsky came down into the basement with his men. He would then say these fateful words to Tsar Nicholas II. Nikolai Alexandrovich, in view of the fact that your relatives are continuing their attack on Soviet Russia, the Euro Executive Committee has decided to execute you. Nicholas only had the time to reply the word, "What?" before 3 bullets would rip through his chest and kill him instantly. Pretty soon, the men all just let loose, firing approximately over 70 rounds into the royal family. Their bodies would then be taken into the woods, stripped of all clothing and belongings, possibly raped, and then thrown down an old mine shaft. So yes, like the movie said, the Romanov family did meet a violent end. It just happened later down the line. More like there was a rumor in Leningrad. St. Petersburg was the capital of the Russian Empire. However, in 1914, at the outbreak of World War I, the city would be renamed to Petrograd, or Peter's Son, as St. Petersburg sounded a little too German for a country that was fighting the Germans. Interestingly enough. In 1924, the city would then be renamed to Leningrad in honor of Vladimir Lenin's death. Interestingly enough, though, the city would once again be called St. Petersburg on June 12, 1991, after elections were being allowed throughout the country in order to fit with Mikhail Gorbachev's glasnost and perestroika policies.
Although the Tsar did not survive, one daughter may be still alive. The Princess Anastasia! But please do not repeat.
Now it's time to talk about a girl by the name of Anna Anderson. Anna Anderson is the very reason this movie exists. And I don't mean that in the way to where, like, she financed it or greenlit the movie or whatever. No, this movie exists because Anna Anderson is most well known for being Anastasia's imposter. Several women over the years claimed to be Anastasia, however, it was Anna who received the most notoriety. Now, what was left of the Romanov family knew pretty much right away that she was a fake, but many of the everyday folk in Russia saw her and believed it. Anna Anderson, or Franciska Swanskowska, which was her actual name that I definitely butchered there, suffered from serious mental illness. Throughout her lifetime, she would be moved into multiple mental asylums, and many people of the Romanov family would pretty much beg people not to take her seriously. It wouldn't be until the year 1991 that the Romanov family's bodies would be exhumed from their graves in Yekaterinburg, and in 2007, the DNA was made public to the world, and it was finally confirmed. After nearly a century of waiting, Anastasia, the Grand Duchess, did in fact die with her family that night on July 17th, 1918. Anna Anderson would die in 1984 in Charlottesville, Virginia from pneumonia. It's unknown exactly what mental illness she had, but it did lead her to play and go along with the role, despite the fact that it didn't really fool anyone important. Except for this one guy named Gleb Botkin, who apparently knew Anastasia when they were kids, but it's from his own words only, so, you know. Yeah! Don't you just love being able to break into song in the Soviet Union? A country well known for restricting human rights such as freedom of speech, especially when it comes to speaking about the old Tsardom? Are you people actively speaking your minds? I am telling Comrade Stalin and you, have fun in the gulags, bitches! If you even make it that far!
One ticket to Paris, please.
Exit visa.
Exit visa?
No exit visa? No ticket!
Okay, that's actually on point. Leaving the Soviet Union was pretty much impossible for any normal person to do. You had to be someone of very special class in order to leave. Either that or just break out.
Anastasia, alive? That's why I'm stuck here in limbo. My curse is unfulfilled.
Well, that and another couple 47 other members that got away from the execution, so yeah, believe it or not, there's probably hundreds of Romanovs still living to this day, believe it or not, that have the Romanov blood in them. So, yeah, you're going to be in limbo for a while there, Rasputin, sorry. Okay, so I think that's about all I've got. I might have missed one or two little things here and there, but I mainly wanted to focus on all the stuff you probably didn't know about. I also know that I didn't talk that much about Anastasia herself in a lot of places, but you gotta understand, she was only about 17 when she died. Being a duchess, she mostly lived a life of luxury up until about 1917 when she was forced from her home, only to be murdered about a year later. Frankly, her imposture was more interesting than the actual Anastasia herself. The stuff that's actually interesting was the stuff involving her father, World War I, the revolutions, and finally, her own death. Regardless, all of this is truly important history, and I think it's both interesting and also important to know about. The movie isn't on the same level as Pocahontas, but yeah, these historical inaccuracies are pretty major. Now, fortunately for the movie, these inaccuracies only affect the first 10 to 15 minutes of it, so the rest of it, in its own right, stands perfectly fine on its own. You know, for what it is. Meanwhile, did you guys like me talking about actual history? If you did, let me know in the comments below, and maybe I'll do it again sometime in the future. Being the huge history nerd that I am, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for watching, everybody, and as always, rock on.
And I find it hard to let go. The memories keep me together. Gotta fight till the end, no pressure, no pressure.